So that's M to the third power by Nunez for the second violin. The second violin part is very similar to the first violin part. There's not a whole lot that's different. There will be times where the first violin keeps going higher while the second violins actually dip down a little bit. But for the most part, it's very much the same, and it has similar concepts. There's a couple times where the second violins are holding out longer, like half notes and dotted half notes. Those are actually very crucial, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the second violin part is really what makes the whole orchestra kind of glued together. So don't underestimate the second violin part. It's very, very important. Well, with this piece, basically, we want to make sure everything is very articulate. So the tempo marking that they put here is actually marcato. They didn't give you a tempo marking. So it's kind of like the expressive marking. So to get a good marcato, we want to have a very crisp and short sound. So you're going to be really at the balance point for pretty much everything. And then you're going to have a very chippy bow stroke. Not to use a lot of bow, and then to put more weight into your bow. The opening part, the first phrase, basically repeats itself. So that's 2 times of the same idea. So if you look at it, you have A, G, F, E, and then D, F, E, G, F, A, and then you do it again. A, G, F, E, D, F, E, G, F, A, right? So if you can do just one of these, the second one's going to be the same thing. So I would practice these very carefully. You have your descending scale, A, G, F, E, and then you have what's called broken thirds. When you play a note and you jump up a third and you come down, and then you jump up a third from there and you come back down and you jump up a third again. So every time you make these kind of leaps and then come down and then leap and then come down and leap and then come down, we call those broken thirds. So feeling those thirds, those broken thirds, will help. You can practice and just keep those broken thirds going. But basically, you just have to do it on one string every time, or on the G string, right, later on. So, knowing your broken thirds, also practicing your scales, making sure you have the minor finger pattern to start off with. And then same thing, minor finger pattern on the G string. The only thing I would change is the fingering here. I don't know what I was thinking when I put the fingerings in, but it would actually be easier on measure 8 do a 4th finger for this D, so that way we don't have a string crossing in the middle of the 16th note. You can make it work, but it's easier to prep the 4th finger and just keep it all on one string, right? Then at measure 9, we get to what's the meter mix. So we have 3/8, 2/4, 3/8, 2/4. So when you have those 3/8 bars and the 2/4 bars, basically, we just have to make sure that we keep the 8th notes consistent. So when we count in 2/4, we're counting 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. But when we count in 3/8, that means we're counting 3/8 notes. So instead of counting 1 and 2 and, we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the same speed of the 8th note will be the beat of the 3/8. So 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3. Feeling that 3/8 pulse, or that meter, is going to mix up the whole thing. It gives it kind of this whole little mixed meter feel that makes the piece more interesting. And And then also Mr. Nunez uses the accents and the slurs to bring out those mixed meters. So watch your 3/8 with the slur in separate 1. Right? And then measure 13 is very much the same as the beginning. And then when we get to 21, this mixed meter is similar, but it changes halfway through. So we start the same way, and then we jump to the D string. Right? So be careful that we want to really be careful of the rhythms, the 3/8, the 2/4, and then also that we're very articulate about our marcatos. Because once we get to measure 27, he indicates the expressive quality should be legato. So no longer are we going to be short and chippy, but we're going to be more legato. So very connected, very smooth. Be careful about your pitch. So we have B flats to Ds. Make sure we're doing that low finger pattern, low 1, stretch 2, stretch 3. And then once you get to measure 27, 8, 9, 30, 31, we have the B flats to Gs. Here I like to use a tunnel. So setting your first finger for B flat, and then feeling that third finger go down on the D string. So here you don't want to lift your first finger, you want to keep it down the whole time. Right, and then that way you can make it faster and not have to worry about lifting the fingers and setting them. Same thing, 37, 38, 39, when you go from E to C. Keeping those fingers down. Then the last thing we have to do is make sure that we're putting the accents in. So every once in a while on the 3/8 bar, we'll always have an accent. So to make it a really true legato accent, you're just going to stress the bow a little bit more, so move it faster. And then also vibrate. If you vibrate on the accent, it'll come out and you will hear, especially when we multiply it by 60 kids all in the orchestra doing the same thing. So. Which means to hold, and then 44 is very much the same as the beginning. So the only thing that's different, well, first of all, when you get to 44, it goes back to being marcato, so we're no longer legato, right? And then when we get to the 3/8 or the mixed meter sections, it does continue up, so be careful, the notes do change. And then, so you're doing a lot of low finger patterns. On the E string, you have to do the F naturals, which have to be low 1s. Same thing on the A string, you have the B flats, which have to be low 1s. On the D string, we go back to being minor finger pattern, and same thing for the G string, with the exception of measure 58. So in measure 58, we have to do the B natural and C sharp. So you're going to do the augmented figure pattern to get those notes. All right? And then from 60, make sure you retake lift, lift. Right? And then you do the same exact thing at 98. Now, 102, you gotta make sure you're counting on these long ties. And then if we can shape things a little bit more, it's gonna add so much to what the violins or the first violins are doing with their little tune. So if we can do those crescendos, diminuendos, and count the entire time, it's gonna make it so much more effective. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And then that last D, it'll just be short. So you can hit it and get off, right? And then do it again, 111. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Now here we need to put in bow changes. Actually. That's what we're going to do is we're going to change and we're going to put an up bow at the end of the 3/8 section. And that way we come out on a down bow for the next section. Grab a pencil. So that's the number one rule, is always have a pencil so that you can make changes. So we're going to put an up bow here as well as here. So that way we're on a down bow for these guys at the 2/4. So you'll feel, again, 102. 1, 2, 3, or sorry, 1 and 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, cello, 1 and 2 and 3. Now at 120, we've seen this before. It's exactly the same as what we did at 37. The only thing that's different is the first time we played it legato. Here, we're doubling. So when you double, if you're having a hard time getting all the notes in, I would suggest breaking it down to being eighth notes again. So don't double the notes first, just do eighth notes. So 1 and 2 and 3 and... Right? And then the other thing is, once you get comfortable with that, then you can start adding in the doubles. And what I would suggest is do it really short and put a pause between each note. So you'll have F, B, F, B. Right, and so on. And then once you get comfortable with the doubles, then you can go through and take out the stops. And then 130, same thing. These are all doubles, so do the same exact thing. Get used to doing that pattern and then add in the doubles. And then take out the stops. Right, and then just go on from there. And then once you get to measure 140, where you have the E to the A, set your E and your A at the same time, so that way you don't have to lift the fingers and jump back and forth. The only thing you'll have to do is rock your bow. And then for that whole section there, I would suggest just practice singles. And be careful about that B natural and C sharp at the end. Then add in your doubles. Right, and then take out the stops. Right. And you might consider using a fourth finger instead of open D. And then make sure you do that crescendo, so start soft. Right. And then for the last note, if you're brave enough, try and jump to third position. Set your second finger on the G string, so you have D. And then also play the open D at the same time, and you'll get twice as much volume. And that's kind of what we want to go for. So that's basically some little tips and tricks with this piece. It looks intimidating, but it really is not that hard. You just got to break it down and work it out. It's a lot of fun, and I look forward to hearing you guys on our first rehearsal. But make sure you find some time to look this stuff over and get really familiar with the music, because it will pay off. All your practice will pay off in the end. So good luck and happy practicing.